The ultimatum from the stars. The morning coffee at the International Space Command had never tasted more bitter than it did that Tuesday when the stars themselves seemed to move. Commander Sarah Mitchell had been reviewing routine patrol reports from the outer colonies when her communications officer, Lieutenant David Park, suddenly went pale at his station. The young man's hands trembled as he pulled off his headset and turned to face his commander with eyes wide with disbelief. "Commander, we have contacts. Hundreds of them. They just appeared out of nowhere," Park stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. Sarah set down her coffee with deliberate calm, though her heart had already begun racing. She had trained for this moment her entire career. The moment humanity would discover it wasn't alone in the universe. But nothing in the simulations had prepared her for the sheer scale of what appeared on her tactical display. Ships of impossible design filled the screen, each one a geometric nightmare of angles that hurt to look at directly. They hung in space like predatory birds, their surfaces shifting between colors that had no names in human language. The alien fleet had positioned itself in a perfect sphere around Earth, with smaller formations surrounding Mars, the Moon, and every human orbital station. It was a textbook containment formation, executed with precision that spoke of centuries of practice. These beings, whatever they were, had done this before. "How many ships exactly?" Sarah asked, forcing her voice to remain steady. Her crew needed to see strength, not fear. 473 vessels in Earth orbit alone, Commander. Another 200 spread throughout the inner system. They appeared simultaneously, as if they were always there and just decided to become visible, Park replied, his fingers dancing across his console as more data streamed in. Before Sarah could respond, every screen in the command center flickered to life with the same image. A being stood before them, tall and impossibly thin, with skin that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Where its eyes should have been, there were instead two swirling vortexes of energy that pulsed with each word it spoke. The creature's voice, when it came, bypassed their ears entirely and resonated directly in their minds. "Inhabitants of the third planet, I am Overseer Thaxneal of the Eternal Hegemony. Your species has been evaluated and found adequate for integration. You will cease all military operations immediately. Your leaders will report to us within one solar rotation to formalize your surrender and integration into our collective. Compliance ensures survival. Resistance ensures extinction. You have been informed." The transmission ended as abruptly as it had begun, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Sarah was the first to recover, her military training kicking in as she began issuing rapid-fire orders. Within minutes, emergency protocols were activated across the globe. World leaders were pulled from their beds, their meetings, their daily lives, and rushed to secure bunkers. The United Earth Council, a body that had only previously existed on paper, suddenly became the most important gathering in human history. President Elena Volkov of the United Earth Coalition stood at the head of the massive holographic conference table, her usually composed features tight with tension. Around her, the leaders of every nation, every colony, every human settlement in the solar system appeared as shimmering blue projections. The discussion was heated, with voices raised in fear, anger, and defiance in equal measure. "We have to consider their offer," argued Minister Chen Wei of the lunar colonies. "Their technology is clearly centuries ahead of ours. Fighting would be suicide. You want us to just roll over and become slaves?" General James Thompson of the Mars Defense Force shot back. "We don't even know what integration means to these things." The argument might have continued for hours, but Admiral Rachel Stone, head of Earth's deep space operations, cleared her throat. The room fell silent. Stone was not known for speaking unless she had something important to say. "Before we make any decisions," she began, her voice carrying the weight of secrets, "there's something you all need to know. Something that's been classified beyond top secret for the past 20 years. She activated her personal holo projector, and a new image appeared above the table. It showed what looked like empty space, but as she adjusted the display, shapes began to emerge from the darkness. Ships. Thousands upon thousands of ships, each one bearing the emblem of United Earth but built with technology that looked almost alien itself. "Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Project Shadow Strike, also known as the Black Armada," Admiral Stone announced. "For 2 decades we've been preparing for this exact scenario. Using breakthrough technology developed from the Mars ruins and refined by our best scientists, we've built a fleet that exists partially outside normal space-time, 40,000 vessels, all combat-ready, all invisible to any known detection method. The silence that followed was deafening. President Volkov was the first to speak, her voice barely containing her amazement. How is this possible? The resources alone, every black project, every unexplained budget increase, every mysterious disappearance of resources, it all went here, Stone explained. We learned from the Mars ruins that space itself has layers, dimensions that overlap, but don't interact. Our ships can slip between these layers, becoming effectively invisible and intangible until the moment they choose to strike. Dr. Marcus Webb, the chief scientist of the project, stepped forward to add technical details. The technology is based on quantum phase shifting. Each ship exists in a state of controlled quantum uncertainty, neither fully here nor fully gone. They can observe normal space without being observed, strike without warning, and disappear without a trace. The revelation changed everything. The Council's despair transformed into something else, something that had defined humanity throughout its history: defiance. They spent the next hours developing their response, crafting a message that would echo through history. When Overseer Thaxanil received Earth's reply, it was alone in its meditation chamber aboard the Hegemony flagship. The creature had conquered 43 species in its long lifetime, and each one had responded to the Hegemony's ultimatum in predictable ways. Some begged, some bargained, some tried to flee, but Earth's response was different. The human who appeared on the screen was President Volkov herself, standing tall despite the weight of an entire species' fate on her shoulders. Behind her stood representatives of every human government, a united front that the Overseer had rarely seen among such a young species. Overseer Thaxanil, Volkov began, her voice steady and clear. Earth has received your message and considered your terms. We have consulted with our people. From the core worlds to the furthest colonies, we have weighed the cost of resistance against the price of surrender. She paused, and when she continued, her words carried the force of humanity's collective will. We decline your offer. Earth does not kneel. Not to you, not to your hegemony, not to anyone. We choose freedom, whatever the cost. The transmission ended, leaving Thaxanil in a state it had rarely experienced: surprise. In 3,000 years of expansion, no species had simply said no with such finality. The Overseer's tendrils writhed in what its species considered deep thought. These humans were either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Either way, they would learn the price of defying the eternal hegemony. As news of Earth's defiance spread through the alien fleet, reactions varied. Some of the younger hegemony officers laughed at the humans' audacity. The veterans, however, felt something different. There was something unsettling about the humans' confidence, something that suggested they knew something the hegemony didn't. Back on Earth, the real work had begun. Admiral Stone stood in the command center of Shadow Strike Base, hidden deep beneath the Antarctic ice. Around her, thousands of personnel worked at their stations, coordinating the most ambitious military operation in human history. The evacuation protocols were being activated, but not in the way the hegemony might expect. Status report, Stone commanded. Black Armada is at 90% readiness, Admiral. All ships report successful phase shift to shadow space. Colony evacuations are proceeding on schedule, reported Captain Michael Roberts, her second in command. And our people? Scared but determined, ma'am. The emergency broadcast system has reached everyone. They know what's at stake. Stone nodded, looking at the tactical display showing the hegemony fleet still maintaining its position around Earth. The aliens were waiting, probably expecting Earth to reconsider, to panic, to break. They had no idea what was about to happen. In homes across Earth and throughout the colonies, families gathered around their emergency kits. These weren't ordinary disaster supplies. Each kit contained a small device that looked like a simple metal disc, but was actually a personal phase shifter, a miniature version of the technology that powered the Black Armada. When activated, it would shift the holder into shadow space, making them effectively invisible and untouchable to anyone in normal space. The plan was audacious in its simplicity. Rather than fight a conventional war against a superior foe, humanity would simply disappear. Cities would empty, colonies would vanish, and the entire human civilization would slip into the shadows, leaving the hegemony to wonder where everyone had gone. And then, when the aliens were confused and scattered, Searching for an enemy that no longer existed in their reality, the Black Armada would strike. As the Earth's rotation brought the deadline closer, preparation reached a fever pitch. Children were told it was like a game of hide-and-seek, the most important one they'd ever play. Adults steeled themselves for a journey into the unknown. Military personnel ran through strike protocols one final time. In shadow space, the Black Armada waited like a coiled spring. The ships were unlike anything humanity had built before. Sleek and angular, they seemed to bend light around them even in the strange non-space they occupied. Their weapons were designed not just to destroy but to terrify, to strike from nowhere and vanish before retaliation was possible. Captain Lisa Chang commanded one of the Armada's heavy cruisers, the Silent Thunder. She watched through her ship's special sensors as the hegemony fleet maintained its threatening position around Earth. The aliens were so confident, so assured of their superiority. They had no idea they were about to face something unprecedented in galactic history. A species that refused to fight on anyone's terms but their own. The Vanishing Act. The hegemony's deadline arrived with the cold precision of a cosmic clock striking midnight. Overseer Thaxanil stood on the command deck of its flagship, the Eternal Doctrine, surrounded by its senior staff. The massive view screen showed Earth spinning peacefully below, its blue oceans and white clouds giving no indication of the defiance its inhabitants had shown. The Overseer's tendrils writhed with anticipation, expecting to see shuttles launching from the planet's surface, carrying human leaders ready to negotiate their surrender. Instead, something impossible began to happen. Senior Analyst Krikstar was the first to notice the anomaly. The creature's four eyes widened as it stared at its sensors, its mandibles clicking in confusion. Overseer were detecting massive energy fluctuations across the planet's surface, but they're not consistent with any known technology or weapon signature. Thaxanil moved closer to the sensor station, its dark form flowing like liquid shadow. Elaborate. Population centers they're experiencing some kind of quantum distortion. New York, London, Beijing, Mumbai, all major cities are showing the same pattern. It's as if reality itself is being twisted, Krikstar reported, its voice rising with each word. On Earth's surface, the Great Vanishing had begun. In Times Square, where millions of people had gathered to watch the alien fleet through telescopes and binoculars, a strange shimmer passed through the crowd. One moment they were there, frightened but united, and the next the square was empty. Cars sat abandoned in the streets, their engines still running. Restaurant tables remained set with hot meals that would never be eaten. It was as if every human being had simply ceased to exist. The phenomenon spread like a wave across the planet. In London, Big Ben chimed to empty streets. In Tokyo, the bullet trains continued their scheduled runs, but no passengers remained to ride them. The great cities of humanity became ghost towns in the span of minutes, their lights still burning but with no one left to see them. Lieutenant Commander Zara O'Brien watched the evacuation from her position in shadow space, aboard the Black Armada destroyer Phantom Strike. Through the ship's dimensional sensors, she could see both realities simultaneously. In normal space, Earth appeared empty and abandoned. In shadow space, billions of humans floated in protective bubbles of phase-shifted reality, scared but safe. All civilian population successfully shifted, Commander, her operations officer reported. Military assets maintaining position in shadow space. The hegemony has no idea where we've gone. Zara smiled grimly. Good, let them wonder. How are our people handling the transition? Better than expected. Some disorientation and nausea, but the medical teams are managing it. The children seem to be adapting fastest, actually treating it like an adventure. Back in normal space, the hegemony fleet was descending into chaos. Thaxanil dispatched landing parties to Earth's major cities, but they found only emptiness. Commander Vexal, leading the ground forces in what had been Paris, stood in the shadow of the Eiffel Tower, its scanning equipment detecting no life signs for miles. Overseer, the city is completely deserted, Vexal reported, but it's not destroyed or evacuated in any conventional sense. Food is still fresh on tables, vehicles are still operational, electronic systems are functioning normally. It's as if every human simply vanished simultaneously. The same reports came from every landing zone. Moscow empty, Cairo deserted, Sydney abandoned. Even the remote villages and isolated farmsteads showed no signs of human life. The animals remained confused but unharmed, and automated systems continued their programmed functions. But of the 8 billion humans who had inhabited Earth, not a single one could be found. Thaxnil's composure, legendary among the hegemony forces, began to crack. Check the colonies. Every human settlement in the system. Find them! The search expanded rapidly. Hegemony ships raced to Mars, where the red planet's growing cities had housed nearly 50 million humans. They found the same scene: intact infrastructure, functioning life support, but no people. The lunar colonies, the asteroid mining stations, the research outposts on Jupiter's moons, all empty. Sub-Commander Jexnil, Thaxnil's offspring and protege, approached carefully. Overseer, perhaps they've developed some form of cloaking technology? They could still be present but hidden from our sensors. Then flood every human structure with revelation gas, Thaxnil ordered. If they're hiding, force them into the open. The revelation gas was one of the hegemony's most effective tools, a compound that disrupted any known form of camouflage or cloaking. They pumped it into Earth's atmosphere, filled buildings with it, even released it into the empty space stations. Nothing happened. The humans weren't hidden. They simply weren't there. In shadow space, Admiral Stone watched the hegemony's increasingly desperate attempts to find them with grim satisfaction. The alien forces were scattered, confused, and most importantly, vulnerable. She turned to her tactical staff assembled in the Black Armada's command center. "Status of enemy fleet deployment?" she asked. Captain Roberts pulled up the tactical display. "They've spread out significantly, Admiral. Search parties throughout the system. Supply lines stretched thin. They've reduced their defensive formations around their capital ships to maximize search coverage. Perfect. Initiate Phase 2. Let's show them that humanity hasn't vanished. We've simply changed the rules of engagement." The first strike came without warning. A hegemony supply convoy traveling between Earth and Mars suddenly found itself under attack. Ships materialized from nothingness, unleashed devastating volleys of weapons fire, and vanished before the escorts could respond. The convoy's commander barely had time to send a distress signal before his command ship was crippled. Similar attacks occurred simultaneously throughout the system. Isolated hegemony patrols were ambushed by ghost ships that appeared and disappeared like phantoms. Communication relays went dark. Supply depots exploded without any visible cause. The mighty hegemony fleet, which had conquered dozens of civilizations, found itself fighting an enemy it couldn't see, couldn't track, and couldn't understand. Captain Lisa Chang of the Silent Thunder coordinated one of the most audacious strikes. Her target was a hegemony battlecruiser that had positioned itself above Earth's North Pole, using its powerful sensors to scan for any trace of human life. Phase shift in 3, 2, 1. "Mark!" she commanded. The Silent Thunder materialized directly beneath the alien vessel, so close their shields nearly touched. In the seconds it took the hegemony crew to react, Chang's weapons officers had already fired a full spread of quantum torpedoes directly into the battlecruiser's vulnerable underside. The Silent Thunder phase shifted back to shadow space, just as the enemy's return fire passed through the space they had occupied. The psychological effect on the hegemony forces was devastating. Warriors who had never known fear began jumping at shadows. Sensor operators reported false contacts constantly, their nerves frayed by the knowledge that any moment, death could appear from nowhere. The ordered, disciplined force that had arrived at Earth was transforming into a paranoid, reactive mob. Overseer Thaxnil received the battle reports in its private chamber, its tendrils now writhing in what its species recognized as rage. In 3,000 years, the hegemony had never encountered anything like this. Species with superior technology had been overcome through numbers. Species with greater numbers had been defeated through superior tactics. But how did one fight an enemy that existed outside the normal laws of physics? Overseer, Krikstar interrupted its thoughts. We've completed analysis of the attack patterns. The human ships appear to be using some form of dimensional phase technology. They're not becoming invisible. They're shifting into an alternate dimensional space. Impossible, Thaxnil stated flatly. Dimensional phase technology is theoretical at best. No species has successfully implemented it. The evidence suggests otherwise, Overseer. And there's more. Based on the number and coordination of attacks, we estimate the humans have at least 30,000 vessels operating in the shadow space. The number staggered Thaxnil. Their intelligence had indicated Earth possessed perhaps 300 warships. Either their intelligence was catastrophically wrong, or the humans had hidden an entire fleet for who knew how long. In shadow space, the human refugees were adapting to their new reality. Temporary cities had been established, floating in the gray void between dimensions. Children played in parks that existed nowhere and everywhere simultaneously. Adults worked to maintain the systems that kept everyone alive and sane in this strange non-place. Dr. Marcus Webb moved through one of these shadow cities, checking on the civilians. Despite the circumstances, human resilience was shining through. Makeshift schools had been established. Entertainment centers showed movies and hosted games. Restaurants served meals prepared from supplies that had been shifted with them. Humanity was not merely surviving in shadow space. They were thriving. Dr. Webb, a young girl, approached him, maybe 8 years old. "When can we go home?" Marcus knelt down to her level, smiling gently. "Soon, sweetheart. We're playing the biggest game of hide-and-seek ever, and we're winning. When the bad aliens give up and go away, we'll all go home together." The girl nodded seriously. "We're really good at hiding, aren't we?" "The best in the galaxy," Marcus assured her. Meanwhile, the Black Armada prepared for its next phase of operations. The hit-and-run attacks had served their purpose. The hegemony was scattered, demoralized, and afraid. Now it was time to show them that humanity wasn't just capable of hiding and striking from the shadows. They were capable of taking the fight directly to their enemies, on humanity's terms. Admiral Stone stood before the assembled fleet commanders, both those physically present and those appearing as holograms from their ships throughout shadow space. The time for games was ending. The time for war had begun. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, "we've successfully demonstrated that humanity will not be conquered, controlled, or intimidated. The hegemony came here expecting to find another easy victim. Instead, they've found something they've never encountered before, a species that refuses to fight by their rules." She activated the tactical display, showing the current positions of all hegemony forces in the system. "They're scattered, searching for us in normal space while we watch from the shadows. Their supply lines are shattered, their morale is breaking, and their leadership is in chaos. It's time to deliver the message that Earth is not for the taking." The assembled commanders nodded in understanding. Each had their orders, their targets, their role in the grand symphony of destruction that was about to unfold. The Black Armada, humanity's hidden sword, was about to show the galaxy that Earth didn't just refuse to kneel. Earth fought back with a vengeance that would echo through the stars.